The night Clara Bennett handed back that crumpled dollar bill in the pouring rain, she had no idea she'd just humiliated a billionaire, or that he'd been testing her all along. What started as another brutal shift at Seattle's worst restaurant became the moment that would either destroy her life or save it. Because that rude stranger in the worn-out coat, he wasn't just any customer. And that single dollar wasn't just an insult. Stay until the end to see how one waitress proved that dignity costs more than money, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button. You won't regret it. The fluorescent lights in the Velvet Oaks kitchen had been flickering for 3 weeks, and nobody cared enough to fix them. Clara Bennett stood at the server station rolling silverware into paper napkins with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Not from the cold, though February in Seattle could freeze your bones through your uniform, but from the number glowing on her phone screen. Final notice. Eviction proceedings. Begin March 1st. 5 days? She had 5 days to come up with $2,400, or she and her sister Emma would be sleeping in their decade-old Honda Civic. The car that barely started on good days and smelled permanently of French fries from the year Clara had worked at that burger joint on Pike Street. Bennett, Table 7 needs water. Marcus, no relation to any billionaire, just an assistant manager with a power complex and coffee breath, snapped his fingers at her from across the dining room. Clara shoved her phone into her apron pocket and grabbed the water pitcher, ignoring the way her stomach twisted itself into knots. The Velvet Oak restaurant had opened with ambitious dreams 15 years ago. Now it was a tired joke, the kind of place that survived on location alone. Close enough to the theater district to catch desperate pre-show diners who didn't read reviews. The carpet was burgundy to hide stains. The artwork was whatever came cheap from estate sales. The menu hadn't changed since 2019. Clara had been working here for 8 months. 8 months of grease burns and degrading comments from customers who thought a $20 entree bought them the right to treat servers like furniture. 8 months of watching Marcus hit on the younger waitresses while the owner, Mr. Patterson, spent more time at his vacation house in Tacoma than actually running the place. But the tips, when they came, kept the lights on in her apartment. Barely. She delivered water to table 7, smiled at the couple who didn't look up from their phones, and returned to her section near the kitchen. The dinner rush, such as it was, had started to thin out. Only a handful of tables remained occupied in the dimly lit dining room. That's when the door opened. The man who walked in looked like he'd been sleeping under an overpass. His trench coat, once probably expensive, now just worn, hung heavy with rain. His boots were scuffed, tracked mud across Mr. Patterson's precious entryway tile. His hair was wet and uncombed, hanging in dark strands across his forehead. He hadn't shaved in days. Clara watched Marcus's face shift through several expressions: disgust, annoyance, calculated cruelty. "Can I help you?" Marcus said, not moving from behind his podium, making it clear that help was the last thing this man would receive. "Table for 1. The stranger's voice was quiet, rough, tired. "I'm not sure we have anything available." "You have 12 empty tables." The man gestured at the near-vacant dining room. "I can count." Marcus's jaw tightened. Clara knew that look. That was Marcus deciding whether the confrontation was worth it or whether he'd rather torture this guy through passive-aggressive service. "Fine, but we close at 9. Marcus grabbed a single menu, didn't grab silverware, and walked toward the worst table in the restaurant, right by the kitchen door, where servers crashed through constantly, where the temperature fluctuated between too hot and freezing, where the busboy dumped dirty dishes. The stranger followed without complaint. Clara busied herself refilling salt shakers, but she watched. She'd developed a radar for trouble after years of restaurant work, and something about this whole situation felt wrong. Not dangerous wrong, just sad wrong. Marcus dropped the menu on the table and walked away without offering water. The man sat down slowly, like his bones hurt. He was younger than Clara had initially thought, maybe early 30s, but carrying the kind of exhaustion that aged people prematurely. He stared at the menu without really reading it. 5 minutes passed. No one approached him. Clara glanced around. The 2 other servers on shift were busy with their own sections. Marcus was deliberately scrolling his phone, making a show of ignoring table 14. "Hey, Marcus," Clara said quietly, walking up to the podium. "You want me to take that table?" "Why? You need the tip money that bad?" Marcus smirked. "Look at him, Bennett. He's probably going to dine and dash or pay in coins. He's still a customer. He's a bum who wandered in from the rain. I'm giving him 5 more minutes, then I'm calling security. We don't have security, then I'm kicking him out myself. Marcus turned his back on her. Conversation over. Clara felt something hot and familiar rise in her chest. Anger, maybe. Or just exhaustion with cruelty masquerading as standards. She'd spent 8 months watching Marcus humiliate people for entertainment. Watched him make teenage girls cry over dropped trays. Watched him mock the elderly man who came in every Sunday and ordered the same soup. She grabbed a glass of water and silverware rolled in a napkin. "What are you doing?" Marcus hissed. "My job." Clara crossed the dining room before he could stop her. The man at table 14 was still staring at his menu, but she had the distinct impression he wasn't seeing any of the words. His hands, rough but with long fingers, rested on either side of the laminated pages. "Good evening." Clara set down the water and silverware, keeping her voice gentle. "I'm Clara. Can I get you started with anything?" The man looked up, and Clara caught her breath. His eyes were gray-blue, the color of Seattle sky before a storm. Intelligent eyes, hurt eyes. Eyes that seemed to catalog everything about her in half a second. Her worn uniform, her pulled-back hair, the exhaustion she tried to hide behind professionalism. "You're very kind," he said quietly. "Most people don't see me at all." There was something in the way he said it. Not self-pity, just observation. "Everyone deserves to be seen," Clara said. "Have you decided what you'd like, or do you need another minute?" "What do you recommend?" "Honestly?" She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "The pot roast is the only thing our cook doesn't microwave. Everything else is, well, edible. Mostly." The ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Pot roast sounds good. Something to drink besides water?" "Coffee. Black." Clara wrote it down. "I'll get that started for you." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Why are you being nice to me?" Clara turned back, surprised. "Why wouldn't I be? Your manager over there has been staring daggers at you since you walked over here, and I'm—" He gestured at himself, at his wet coat and mud-stained boots. "Not exactly your typical customer." "You walked in during a rainstorm looking for a hot meal," Clara said. "That makes you exactly like every other customer. The coat doesn't matter." Something shifted in his expression. He studied her with renewed interest, like she'd just revealed something unexpected. "What's your name again?" "Clara." "Thank you, Clara." She smiled, genuine this time, and headed back toward the kitchen. Marcus intercepted her before she could put in the order. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "Taking his order." "I told you he's not worth your time." "Then it's a good thing it's my time to waste." Clara pushed past him and clipped the order ticket to the line. "Pot roast, side of mashed potatoes, coffee, black." The cook, a 60-year-old Korean woman named Mrs. Kim, who had zero patience for Marcus, glanced at the ticket and then at Clara. "That guy at 14? Yeah. Marcus is going to write you up." "Probably." Mrs. Kim made a sound that might have been approval and started plating the pot roast. Clara poured the coffee, checked on her other tables, and tried to ignore the way Marcus kept glaring at her from across the dining room. When she brought the food to table 14, the man was looking out the rain-streaked window at the street beyond, watching people hurry past under umbrellas, their lives continuing in directions he couldn't follow. "Here you go." Clara set down the plate carefully. "Anything else I can get you?" "No, this is perfect." But he didn't start eating, not right away. He just stared at the food like he was working up the courage to take a bite. Clara had seen that look before, on people who weren't sure when their next meal might come, on people who'd learned not to trust kindness because it usually came with strings attached. She left him alone. Over the next 40 minutes, Clara watched from the periphery. The man ate slowly, methodically. He wasn't savoring the mediocre pot roast. It wasn't good enough to savor, but he wasn't rushing either. He drank 3 cups of coffee. He never pulled out a phone, never read anything, just sat in that terrible table by the kitchen door, existing in a bubble of quiet exhaustion. Other customers came and went. A theater couple argued about parking. 2 businessmen complained about portion sizes. A teenage girl sent back her salmon twice before leaving without eating. Normal night at the Velvet Oak. Around 8:30, the man at table 14 signaled for his check. Clara printed it out, placed it in the vinyl folder, and brought it over. "No rush," she said. Take your time. He opened the folder, looked at the total, $23.50. For a long moment, he just stared at it. Is everything okay? Clara asked. Yes. Everything is... He pulled out his wallet. It was leather, worn smooth from years of use. Everything is fine. He placed exact cash in the folder, $23.50. Then he stood up, pulled his coat back on, and looked at Clara with those storm-gray eyes. Thank you for your kindness tonight. Of course. Stay dry out there. He nodded and walked toward the door. Clara picked up the folder, expecting maybe a few dollars on the table. Tips at the Velvet Oak were notoriously bad. There was no tip on the table. She opened the folder. Inside, under the cash, was a single $1 bill. Crumpled. Old. Like he'd found it in his pocket as an afterthought. Clara stared at it, felt something cold and familiar settle in her chest. Of course. Of course she'd spent the last hour being kind to someone, defending him against Marcus, giving him her best service, and this was the result. $1 on a $23 check. Behind her, she heard Marcus laughing. He'd been watching, waiting for this exact moment. Told you, Bennett. I told you he wasn't worth it. Marcus's voice carried across the dining room. The remaining customers looked up. $1! He tipped you $1! Clara's face burned. The other servers were staring. Mrs. Kim had come out of the kitchen to see what the commotion was about. Even the customers looked embarrassed on her behalf. You just wasted an hour on a bum who left you $1. Marcus was enjoying this. But hey, at least you got to feel good about yourself, right? Isn't that worth it? Clara picked up the dollar bill. It felt obscene in her hand. Not because it was only $1. She'd received worse, she'd received nothing, but because something about this felt intentional. Felt like a test she'd failed without knowing she was being tested. Through the window, she could see the man in the trench coat walking away in the rain. Slow steps, tired shoulders, alone. And something in Clara just broke. Maybe it was the eviction notice burning a hole in her pocket. Maybe it was 8 months of Marcus's cruelty. Maybe it was just this one final indignity, this one last reminder that kindness was for suckers, and dignity was a luxury she couldn't afford. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe she was just tired of being treated like she was worthless. Clara grabbed the dollar bill and ran. Bennett! What the hell? Bennett! She didn't stop, didn't grab her coat, didn't think about consequences. She just pushed through the front door into the freezing rain and ran down the sidewalk, her uniform soaking through immediately, her shoes splashing through puddles. Wait, sir, wait! The man in the trench coat stopped and turned around. Up close, in the streetlight and rain, Claire could see surprise on his face. Real surprise. You forgot something, Clara said, breathing hard. She held out the crumpled dollar bill. I don't want this. I gave you a tip. No, you didn't. Clara's voice was shaking, but not from cold. You gave me an insult, and I don't care how bad my day was. I don't care how much I need money. I'm not taking this, because my dignity is worth more than $1. It's worth more than any amount of money someone like you could leave behind to make themselves feel better. The man stared at her. Rain ran down both their faces. Someone like me? Yeah, someone who walks in looking pathetic so people will feel sorry for you, who lets a waitress defend you and serve you and treat you like a human being, and then you leave $1 like it's some kind of joke. Like I'm a joke. That's not... I don't care what it is. Clara shoved the dollar into his hand. Keep it. Buy yourself a coffee. Buy yourself some self-respect. I don't need your charity, and I don't need your games. She turned around and walked back toward the restaurant. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. She'd just committed career suicide. Marcus would fire her on the spot, she knew it. But she didn't care. She didn't care. Clara? She stopped. She hadn't told him her last name. He shouldn't have remembered her first name. The man walked up behind her. When she turned around, his expression had changed completely. The exhaustion was still there, but something else had replaced the sadness. Something sharp, calculating. You're right, he said quietly. That was a test, and you just passed. Before Clara could respond, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Not a taxi, not a rideshare. A Mercedes S-Class with windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. The back door opened. The man in the trench coat pulled out a business card, expensive cardstock, embossed lettering, and pressed it into her hand. Come to this address tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Don't be late. I don't. What? You said your dignity was worth more than money. Those gray-blue eyes held hers. Let's see if that's true. He climbed into the Mercedes. The door closed. The car pulled away into the rain, leaving Clara standing alone on the sidewalk, soaking wet, holding a business card she couldn't read in the dark. Behind her, the Velvet Oak's front door opened. "Bennett!" Marcus stood in the doorway, his face purple with rage. "You just assaulted a customer. You chased him down the street. He grabbed me," Clara lied, her voice flat. "I was returning his property." "Bullshit! I saw the whole thing!" Marcus crossed his arms. "You're done. You're fired. Clean out your locker and get out." Clara looked at him, at his smug face and cheap tie and the power he wielded over minimum wage workers because it was the only power he'd ever have. "Fine." "Fine?" Marcus blinked. "That's it? No begging? No crying? You want me to beg?" "I want you to understand what you just threw away. Good luck finding another job in this city after I tell everyone what you did." Clara walked past him into the restaurant. Her locker was in the back, past the kitchen, in a hallway that smelled like mildew and broken dreams. She had one extra shirt, a pack of tampons, and a photo of her and Emma from last Christmas. She packed it all into her purse. Mrs. Kim appeared in the hallway, wiping her hands on her apron. "You okay?" "I've been better." "That was brave. Stupid, but brave." Mrs. Kim pulled something from her pocket, 2 20s. "I've been saving this to give you. Consider it a severance package." Clara's eyes burned. "Mrs. Kim, I can't." "Yes, you can. You're the only server in this dump who ever treated me like a person instead of a vending machine." She pressed the money into Clara's hand. "Go home. Take care of your sister. Something better will come along." Clara hugged her, quick and fierce. Then she left through the back door, avoiding the dining room entirely. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. Clara stood under the flickering streetlight in the alley and finally looked at the business card. Callaway Global Holdings. Ethan Callaway, CEO. Private number 2-065550147. Below that, an address in Madison Park. The kind of address that came with views and gates and security. Clara turned the card over, written in neat handwriting on the back. 9 a.m. Don't disappoint me. She walked to her car in a daze, climbed into the Honda Civic that smelled like old fries and started the engine on the third try. She sat there for a long moment, shivering in her wet uniform, staring at the embossed business card. Ethan Callaway. The name sounded familiar, important, like something she should know but couldn't quite place. She pulled out her phone, Googled the name. The first result was a Forbes article from 6 months ago. Billionaire CEO Ethan. Callaway takes over Callaway. Global following wife's tragic death. Below that, a photo. Clara's phone nearly slipped from her wet hands. The man in the photo was clean-shaven, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car. His hair was styled. His expression was professional, cold, completely controlled. But the eyes were the same. Storm gray, exhausted, hurt. The man who'd left her a $1 tip wasn't a bum. He was one of the richest men in Seattle. And he wanted to see her tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Clara sat in her car, rain drumming on the roof, and started to laugh. It was either that or cry, and she'd already cried too much this month. She laughed until her sides hurt, until the absurdity of the entire night overwhelmed everything else. She'd just thrown a dollar bill at a billionaire and told him to buy some self-respect. She'd just gotten fired for defending her dignity to a man who could probably buy the entire restaurant with his pocket change. And now she had an appointment she couldn't miss, and no idea what would happen when she showed up. Clara looked down at the eviction notice still glowing on her phone screen. Final notice, eviction proceedings. Begin March 1st, 5 days. She had 5 days and no job and $40 from Mrs. Kim and a mysterious appointment with a billionaire who'd tested her for reasons she couldn't begin to understand. Clara put the car in drive and headed home through the rain-slicked streets of Seattle, the business card resting on the passenger seat beside her. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Her life had just changed forever. And there was no going back. Clara didn't sleep. She sat on the lumpy futon in the apartment she shared with Emma, staring at Ethan Calloway's business card until the words blurred together. The radiator clanked and hissed in the corner, providing just enough heat to keep the place from freezing, but not enough to actually be comfortable. Outside, Seattle's rain had finally stopped, leaving behind that particular 3 a.m. silence that felt like the world holding its breath. Emma was asleep in the bedroom, the only actual bedroom in their Studio Plus setup, curled under 3 blankets because the heat barely reached that corner. She had class at 10, marketing degree, junior year, drowning in student loans, but still convinced that education was the way out of the cycle their parents had left them in. Their parents. Clara tried not to think about them much. Dad had disappeared when Emma was 6. Mom had tried her best until the cancer took her 4 years ago, leaving Clara, then 26, with a teenage sister, medical debt, and a profound understanding that the universe didn't give a damn about fairness. Clara looked at her phone. The Forbes article was still open. Ethan Calloway, 32, assumed full control of Calloway Global Holdings following the sudden death of his wife, Elizabeth Calloway, in a car accident last year. The company, valued at $4.2 billion, operates in real estate development, tech investment, and sustainable infrastructure. Sources close to the family report that Calloway has become increasingly reclusive since the tragedy, rarely appearing at public events and delegating most operational decisions to his executive team. There was a photo of Elizabeth, blonde, elegant, smiling at some charity function. The kind of woman who probably never ate at places like the Velvet Oak, never worried about eviction notices, never got yelled at by managers with bad breath. And now she was dead, and her husband was wandering into failing restaurants in disguise, testing waitresses for God knew what reason. Clara's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Car will pick you up at 8:30 a.m. Be ready. Her heart kicked into overdrive. She typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Don't be late." Clara set the phone down with shaking hands. This was insane. This was absolutely insane. She should ignore the whole thing, sleep until noon, then spend the day job hunting like a rational person who'd just been fired. Except she had 5 days until eviction and $40 for Mrs. Kim. Except a billionaire had looked her in the eyes and said she'd passed a test. Except something in his voice, that quiet exhaustion, that genuine surprise when she'd handed back the dollar, had felt real in a way nothing else at the Velvet Oak ever had. At 7 a.m., Clara gave up on sleep entirely. She showered in the bathroom with the cracked tile and missing grout, dried her hair as best she could with their dying blow-dryer, and stared at her closet with mounting panic. What did you wear to meet a billionaire? She owned exactly 3 outfits that weren't restaurant uniforms or pajamas. A black dress from Emma's high school graduation, jeans and a decent sweater, slacks and a blouse she'd bought for job interviews 3 years ago. The slacks it was. Emma stumbled out of the bedroom at 7:30, hair sticking up, mascara smudged from yesterday. "Why are you dressed?" she mumbled, heading straight for the coffee maker. "I have a meeting." "What kind of meeting? You got fired." "I know I got fired. This is something else." Emma turned around, suddenly more alert. "What kind of something else?" Clara hesitated. "How did you explain this without sounding completely unhinged?" "A customer from the restaurant offered me a job opportunity." "What restaurant customer offers job opportunities? Was he a recruiter or something?" "Or something." "Clara," Emma crossed her arms. "What's going on?" "I don't know yet, but I need you to trust me, okay? I'll text you later." "This is sketchy as hell." "I know. If you get murdered, I'm going to be so pissed at you." "Fair enough." Emma poured coffee into 2 mugs and handed one to Clara. They stood in the tiny kitchen, drinking in silence, the way they had every morning for the past 4 years. Sisters who'd become each other's entire support system through sheer necessity. Clara said quietly, "if this goes well, if this turns into something real, we might actually make rent." Emma's expression shifted. "How much does this opportunity pay?" "I have no idea, but the guy who offered it can afford to find out." At 8:25, Clara stood on the sidewalk outside their building, clutching her purse and trying not to throw up from nerves. The morning was cold and gray, typical Seattle February. A few people walked past on their way to actual jobs with actual security. At exactly 8:30, a black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The same car from last night. The driver, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a professional demeanor, got out and opened the back door. Miss Bennett? Clara's mouth went dry. Yes. Mr. Calloway sent me to collect you. Please. She climbed into the back seat. The interior smelled like leather and money. The seats were heated. Classical music played softly from speakers she couldn't see. The driver got back in and pulled into traffic without another word. Clara watched Seattle slide past the tinted windows. They headed north, away from her neighborhood with its pawn shops and coin laundries, toward the parts of the city she only saw in tourism photos. The streets got cleaner, the buildings got newer, the cars got nicer. 20 minutes later, they turned onto a private road. No, not a road, a driveway. A driveway that wound through manicured grounds, past actual landscaping, toward a house that made Clara's brain short-circuit. It wasn't a house. It was an estate. Modern architecture, all glass and steel and clean lines, perched on a hillside with views of Lake Washington that probably cost more than Clara would earn in her entire lifetime. "Oh my God," she whispered. The driver pulled up to the front entrance. "Mr. Calloway is expecting you in his office. James will show you in." The door opened before Clara could respond. A man in an actual butler's uniform, because apparently those existed outside of movies, stood waiting. "Miss Bennett, this way, please." Clara followed him through doors that probably cost more than her car, into a foyer with marble floors and a staircase that curved upward like something from an architecture magazine. Everything was clean. Everything was expensive. Everything screamed that she didn't belong here. James led her through hallways lined with art that was probably original, past rooms she only glimpsed. A library, a sitting room, what looked like a home gym, until finally stopping at a set of double doors. "Mr. Calloway will see you now." The doors opened. The office was huge, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. Morning light streamed in, making everything glow. There was a desk, sleek, modern, probably Danish, and sitting behind it was Ethan Calloway. No trench coat this time. He wore a gray button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, dark slacks, no tie. His hair was still damp from a shower. He looked like himself from the Forbes photo, clean, professional, controlled, except for those eyes, those exhausted, storm-gray eyes. He stood when Clara entered. "You came. You sent a car." Most people would have ignored it, thought it was a scam. Most people haven't been fired and evicted in the same 24 hours. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Please, sit." Clara sat in one of the chairs facing his desk. Leather. Comfortable. Probably worth 3 months of her old salary. Ethan didn't sit back down. He walked to the windows, hands in his pockets, looking out at the view. "Do you know who I am?" "I Googled you." "Then you know what I'm worth. What this company is worth. What everyone around me is trying to take." Clara said nothing. "My wife died 14 months ago," Ethan continued, his voice flat. "Car accident. She was coming home from a board meeting. The other driver ran a red light." He paused. "We have a son, Noah. He's 8. He hasn't spoken more than 10 words at a time since the funeral." Clara's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." "Everyone's sorry." Ethan turned to face her. "Sorry doesn't help. Sorry doesn't protect my son from a family that sees him as a bargaining chip. Sorry doesn't keep this company from being torn apart by people who think I'm too weak to lead it." "Then why am I here?" "Because last night you did something no one else has done in over a year." "I threw money at you. You chose your dignity over a tip." Ethan walked back to his desk, leaned against it. "Do you understand how rare that is? I've spent 14 months surrounded by people who smile to my face and plot behind my back, board members who want me to step down, siblings who think they deserve my wife's shares, employees who kiss my ass because they're terrified of being fired." His jaw tightened. "I needed to know if genuine people still existed, if kindness without an agenda was still possible. So you tested me." "Yes." "That's manipulative. It's survival." Ethan's eyes held hers. "My brother Marcus is trying to force a board vote to remove me as CEO. My sister Evelyn is leaking stories to the press about my mental state. I have investors questioning my leadership and competitors circling like sharks. I need someone I can trust, someone who isn't already corrupted by this world." Clara laughed. Actually laughed. You don't know me. I could be the worst person on the planet. You gave up a tip to preserve your self-respect while facing eviction. That tells me everything I need to know. It tells you I'm stubborn and probably stupid. It tells me you have principles. Ethan pulled a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across to her. I'm offering you a position as my executive assistant and personal advisor. Salary is $180,000 annually, plus benefits, plus housing if you need it. Claire's brain stopped working. $180,000? Is that acceptable? That's more than I've made in the last 5 years combined. Then it should cover your rent. She opened the folder. Inside was a contract, professionally printed with her name already filled in. The salary was real. The benefits were insane. Health insurance, dental, vision, 401k matching, stock options. What's the catch? Claire asked. The catch is that everyone in my life will hate you. My family will try to destroy you. The media will dig into your past. You'll be working 70-hour weeks. You'll be dealing with people who think you're beneath them. And if you fail, you'll lose everything. Sounds delightful. Ethan's expression didn't change. I'm not offering you an easy job, Clara. I'm offering you a chance to prove that you're as strong as I think you are. To prove that integrity still matters in a world that's forgotten what the word means. Clara stared at the contract, at the number that could change her life, Emma's life. Could pay off debts, cover tuition, buy them actual furniture instead of futon couches from Goodwill. But there was something else there too. Something in the way Ethan was looking at her. Not like a billionaire hiring staff, but like a drowning man reaching for anything solid. Why me? She asked. Really, you could hire anyone, people with degrees, experience, connections. I don't need degrees, I need loyalty. I need someone who understands what it's like to fight for survival. Ethan's voice was quiet. I need someone who looks at money as a tool, not a goal. Someone who'll tell me the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Can you do that? Clara thought about Marcus's smug face, the eviction notice, Mrs. Kim pressing $40 into her hand, Emma sleeping under 3 blankets in an apartment that barely qualified as shelter. She thought about dignity and desperation and the impossible choice between them. When do I start? Something that might have been relief crossed Ethan's face. Today. Sign the contract and we'll get you set up. Clara picked up the pen sitting on top of the folder. Her hand shook slightly. One condition, she said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating? I need advance on the first month's salary. $3,000 today. Done. Anything else? Yeah, Clara met his eyes. Don't ever test me like that again. You want honesty? You want loyalty? Then treat me like a person, not an experiment. I'm not interested in playing games. For the first time since she'd entered the office, Ethan smiled, really smiled. It transformed his entire face, made him look younger, less haunted. Deal. Clara signed the contract. Ethan made a phone call, and 5 minutes later James appeared with a check for $3,000. Just like that. Like money was air. James will show you to your office, Ethan said. Take the morning to get settled. This afternoon I need you at a board meeting. A board meeting? Today? Welcome to Callaway Global Holdings. We don't ease into anything. Clara followed James out of Ethan's office, down another hallway, to a smaller but still impossibly nice office with a view of the gardens. There was a desk, a computer, a phone system that looked like it required a manual. If you need anything, use extension 201, James said. That reaches the main house staff. Extension 202 is Mr. Callaway's direct line. Don't abuse it. I won't. James left. Clara stood alone in her new office, holding a check for $3,000, trying to process the fact that her life had just shifted completely off its axis. She called Emma. Did you get murdered? Emma answered. No, I got hired. Hired for what? Executive assistant to a billionaire. Silence. Then, what the hell are you talking about? Clara explained. Not everything, not the test, not the $1 bill, but enough. The job offer, the salary, the fact that they could actually pay rent now. This is insane, Emma said. This is absolutely insane. I know. You're sure this is legal? Like you're not about to become a drug mule or something? Pretty sure billionaire CEOs don't need drug mules. I'm Googling him right now. A pause. Oh my God, Clara. Oh my God. This guy he's actually famous. He's on the Forbes list. His wife died. I know, I read the articles. And he just hired you out of nowhere? Apparently. I'm coming over there. You have class. Screw class. I need to see this place. I need to make sure you're not having a mental breakdown. Em, I'm fine. I'll be home tonight. We can talk then. After she hung up, Clara sat at her new desk and tried to slow her racing heart. Through the window, she could see gardeners working on the grounds. Actual gardeners, with actual tools and actual knowledge of how to keep plants alive. A knock on the door made her jump. A woman entered without waiting for an invitation. She was probably 40, blonde, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than Clara's entire wardrobe. Her smile was sharp and didn't reach her eyes. "You must be the new assistant," she said. "I'm Evelyn Calloway, Ethan's sister." Clara stood. "Clara Bennett. Nice to meet you." "Is it?" Evelyn walked around the office like she owned it. "I have to say, I'm curious. What exactly are your qualifications for this position?" "I'm good at my job." "And what job is that? According to my research, you were a waitress at a failing restaurant until last night." So the knives were out already. "That's correct," Clara said evenly. "And now you're my brother's executive assistant. Quite the promotion." Evelyn's smile got sharper. "Tell me, Miss Bennett, are you sleeping with him?" Clara felt heat rise in her face. "No. Not yet, you mean? Not ever. I'm here to do a job." "Of course you are." Evelyn moved closer. "Let me give you some advice. My brother is vulnerable right now. Grieving. Not thinking clearly. He's made poor decisions before, and this, hiring someone with no experience, no education, no connections, is just the latest example. Whatever you think you're going to accomplish here, you won't. This family eats people like you for breakfast." "Thanks for the warning." "It's not a warning. It's a promise." Evelyn headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and the board meeting this afternoon? Try not to embarrass yourself. These are serious people having serious conversations. Don't speak unless spoken to." She left. Clara sat back down, hands shaking with anger. So that's how it was going to be. Ethan hadn't exaggerated. His family really did hate outsiders. The morning passed in a blur. Clara spent it trying to figure out the computer system, reading through files James had left for her about company operations, and generally feeling like she'd jumped into the deep end without learning to swim. At noon, James appeared with lunch on a tray. Actual lunch. Not microwaved leftovers or vending machine snacks, but a salad with grilled chicken, fresh bread, fruit. "Mr. Calloway requests your presence in his office at 1:30, James said. "The board meeting begins at 2. Clara ate lunch at her desk, watching rain start to fall outside. The gardens looked beautiful in the rain. Everything here looked beautiful. It was like stepping into a different universe where problems didn't exist and money solved everything. Except money didn't solve everything. Ethan's wife was still dead. His son still didn't speak. His family still wanted to destroy him. At 1:30, Clara walked back to Ethan's office. He was on the phone when she entered, speaking in rapid-fire sentences about quarterly projections and investor confidence. He gestured for her to sit. When he hung up, he looked tired again. The brief smile from this morning had disappeared. "Ready for the firing squad?" he asked. "Is that what board meetings are like? When your brother is trying to stage a coup?" "Yes." Ethan stood, grabbed a jacket from the back of his chair. "A few ground rules. Don't speak unless I ask you a direct question. Take notes on everything. Pay attention to who's saying what and how they're saying it. I need to know who's loyal and who's been bought." "Bought by your brother?" "By whoever's offering the best price." He headed for the door. "Marcus has been making promises. Board seats, consulting fees, early retirement packages. He's trying to gather enough votes to force me out." "Can he do that?" "If he gets 60% of the board, yes." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Right now he has about 45. He needs 3 more votes." They walked through the house to a wing Clara hadn't seen yet. The halls got more formal, more corporate. They passed other employees, people in suits carrying tablets and folders, people who looked at Clara like she was an alien life form. The boardroom was exactly what Clara had imagined. Long table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of downtown Seattle. 12 people were already seated, and every single one of them looked at Clara with varying degrees of confusion and disdain. Marcus Calloway sat at the far end of the table. He was maybe 35 with Ethan's same coloring, but none of his restraint. He looked smug, confident, like he'd already won. "Ethan," he said, "you're late. By 30 seconds. Ethan took his seat at the head of the table. "Let's begin." Clara sat in a chair against the wall, pulled out the notebook James had given her, and tried to become invisible. The meeting started with financial reports, numbers Clara barely understood, projections and margins and quarterly targets. Then they moved to operational updates, new projects in development, existing properties, tech investments. Clara took notes on everything, but mostly she watched faces. An older man with white hair kept glancing at Marcus and nodding slightly. Bought. A woman in her 50s avoided eye contact with everyone. Scared. Two men in identical suits whispered to each other whenever Ethan spoke. Definitely bought. Marcus waited until 40 minutes into the meeting before making his move. "I'd like to raise a concern about leadership direction," he said, his voice carefully casual. The room went quiet. "What concern?" Ethan asked. "The company has been underperforming since you took over as CEO. Profits are down 12% year over year. We've lost 3 major investor partnerships. Projects are running over budget." Marcus leaned forward. "I think it's time we discussed whether you're the right person to lead Callaway Global Holdings into the future." "I'm the majority shareholder," Ethan said flatly. "That makes me the right person." Majority shareholder doesn't mean infallible leader. The board has a fiduciary responsibility to act in the company's best interests. "And removing me serves the company's best interests?" "Temporarily stepping aside might." Marcus's smile was poisonous. "You're grieving, Ethan. Everyone understands that. No one blames you for being distracted. But the company needs strong leadership right now, and you're not providing it." Clara watched Ethan's face, saw the muscle jump in his jaw, saw his hands tighten on the armrests. "I'm providing exactly the leadership this company needs," Ethan said quietly. "Are you?" Marcus pulled out a folder. "Let's talk about your recent hiring decision. This morning you brought on a new executive assistant. Someone with no experience, no credentials, no background in corporate operations. Someone you met yesterday at a restaurant." He looked directly at Clara. "Care to explain that decision to the board?" Every eye in the room turned to Clara. Her face burned. Her heart hammered. This was the test, the real test. "Her qualifications are none of your concern," Ethan said. "Everything you do is our concern. That's how boards work." Marcus's voice got harder. "You're making erratic decisions, hiring random people off the street, isolating yourself, refusing to engage with the operational realities of running a multi-billion-dollar company. This is exactly why we need to discuss your fitness for leadership." "I'm perfectly fit." "Then prove it." Marcus slid a document across the table. "I'm calling for a vote of no confidence. If the board agrees that you're not capable of leading effectively, you'll step down as CEO and transition to a purely advisory role. I'll assume operational control until we can conduct a proper search for permanent leadership." The room erupted. People talking over each other, voices raised, alliances suddenly visible. Clara stopped taking notes. She couldn't look away from Ethan's face. He wasn't surprised. He'd known this was coming. That's why he'd hired her. That's why he'd needed someone he could trust. "You don't have the votes," Ethan said calmly. "Don't I?" Marcus looked around the table. "Show of hands. Who believes Ethan should step down as CEO?" 4 hands went up immediately. The white-haired man. The 2 identical suit guys. A younger woman Clara hadn't noticed before. 4 votes. Marcus needed 7 for 60%. No other hands moved. 4 votes, Ethan said. Not even close. This was just a preliminary measure. Marcus's confidence didn't crack. The real vote happens in 2 weeks, and by then, people will have had time to consider what's best for the company instead of what's best for your ego. He stood. The 4 who'd voted with him stood too. They left the boardroom together, a united front. The remaining board members sat in uncomfortable silence. Finally, the scared-looking woman spoke. "Ethan, you know we support you, but Marcus isn't wrong about everything. The numbers are concerning, and this," she gestured vaguely at Clara, "doesn't help with optics. Optics don't run companies. Strategy does. Strategy requires focus. And you seem Distracted. Ethan's voice went cold. My wife died. I'm raising a grieving 8-year-old, and I'm still hitting every target this company needs to hit. If that's distracted, I'd hate to see what you consider focused. The woman flinched. I didn't mean... Meeting adjourned. Ethan stood. I'll see you all in 2 weeks. They filed out quickly, avoiding eye contact. When the room was empty except for Ethan and Clara, he walked to the windows and stood there, hands in pockets, shoulders tight. Clara didn't know what to say. Didn't know if she should say anything. That went better than expected, Ethan finally said. Better? He only got 4 votes. I was expecting 5. He turned around. In 2 weeks, he'll have 7, maybe 8. People are scared. They think I'm weak. They think grief has made me incompetent. Has it? The question came out before Clara could stop it. Ethan stared at her, then unexpectedly he laughed. You really don't know how to play politics, do you? You hired me for honesty. Is grief making you incompetent? No, but it's making me tired, making me wonder if any of this matters. He walked back to the table, braced his hands on it. My wife built half of this company. She was the one with vision, with drive. I just executed. And now she's gone, and I'm trying to keep everything running while everyone around me waits for me to fail so they can pick the bones clean. Clara stood, walked over to where he was standing. You're not going to fail, she said. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because you're standing here instead of giving up. Because you hired me instead of hiding. Because you're still fighting, even though it would be easier to walk away. Clara met his eyes. Grief doesn't make you weak. Survival makes you strong. For a long moment, Ethan just looked at her. Really looked at her, the way he had in the restaurant. Like he was seeing something he hadn't expected to find. I hope you're right, he said quietly. A small voice from the doorway made them both turn. Dad? A little boy stood there, maybe 8 years old, with Ethan's dark hair and gray eyes. He wore jeans and a Star Wars t-shirt. He looked small and lost and terrified. Noah! Ethan's entire demeanor changed, softened. What's wrong, buddy? Bad dream. The boy's voice was barely a whisper. Come here. Noah ran to his father. Ethan picked him up, this tiny kid who seemed too fragile for the world, and held him close. Clara's heart cracked open. This is Clara, Ethan said gently. She's going to be working here now. Clara, this is Noah. Noah peeked at her from his father's shoulder. His eyes were red from crying. Hi, Noah, Clara said softly. The boy didn't respond, just buried his face back in Ethan's neck. He doesn't talk much, Ethan said. Not since his mom. I understand. They stood there in the boardroom, this billionaire holding his broken child, and Clara realized something fundamental. Money didn't protect anyone from pain. Power didn't heal grief. And Ethan Calloway, for all his wealth and influence, was just as lost as she was. I should go, Clara said. Let you two... Stay. Ethan's voice was quiet. Please. Noah should get used to seeing you around. So Clara stayed. She sat in one of the leather chairs while Ethan talked softly to his son about dreams and monsters and how sometimes nighttime was hard, but morning always came. Noah didn't say anything, just listened and held on tight. Eventually, a nanny appeared, a kind-looking woman in her 60s, and took Noah back to his room. Ethan sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 32 years and then some. That's why I can't fail, he said. Not for the company, not for my pride, for him. Because if Marcus takes over, he'll shove Noah into boarding school and forget he exists. If the board removes me, I lose control of my son's trust fund, his inheritance, his future, everything Elizabeth wanted for him. Then we won't let that happen, Clara said. We? You hired me. That means your problems are my problems now. She pulled out her notebook. So let's figure out how to solve them. Ethan looked at her with something that might have been hope. And for the first time since walking into this mansion, Clara felt like maybe, just maybe, she'd made the right choice, even if it destroyed her in the process. Over the next week, Clara learned that working for a billionaire meant operating in a state of controlled chaos punctuated by moments of absolute insanity. Her days started at 6 a.m. with briefings from James about Ethan's schedule. By 7, she was fielding emails from investors, lawyers, department heads, all of whom seemed to think she had the authority to make decisions she absolutely did not have the authority to make. By 8, she was in meetings where people used words like synergy and optimization without irony. By noon, she was drowning, and she loved it. Not the drowning part, but the challenge. The feeling that she was building something instead of just surviving. The fact that her brain actually got used during work hours, instead of just her ability to smile through abuse. Emma had moved into the guest house on the estate, a guest house that was nicer than any apartment they'd ever lived in. Ethan had offered it without Clara asking, had simply mentioned that commuting from their old neighborhood would waste time better spent working. Emma was suspicious at first, convinced this was some elaborate scheme, but she'd stopped arguing after seeing the bathroom with the rainfall shower and heated floors. "This is insane," Emma kept saying. "This whole situation is completely insane." She wasn't wrong. Clara spent her evenings reviewing documents for the upcoming charity gala. The event Ethan had casually mentioned would either save his reputation or destroy it completely. It was scheduled for 2 weeks from now, the same night as the board vote. Marcus had planned it that way deliberately. Maximum pressure, maximum visibility, maximum chance for Ethan to fail spectacularly in front of Seattle's entire elite society. The gala was supposed to showcase Callaway Global Holdings' commitment to community investment. Politicians would attend, tech CEOs, old money families who'd been running Seattle since before computers existed. The guest list read like a Forbes convention with a side of political power. And Clara, who'd never planned anything more complicated than Emma's high school graduation party, was somehow in charge of making it perfect. "Why me?" she'd asked Ethan during one of their daily strategy meetings. "Because you're not afraid to fail," he'd said. "Everyone else is so terrified of making mistakes that they don't make decisions at all. You make decisions and deal with consequences. That's what I need right now." That's a very generous way of saying I don't know enough to be scared. Maybe, but fear is what Marcus is counting on. He thinks putting you in charge will expose you as incompetent and prove I'm making reckless choices. Ethan had looked at her across his desk, those gray eyes intense. Prove him wrong. So Clara threw herself into gala planning with the same stubborn determination that had made her hand back a $1 bill in the rain. The event coordinator was a woman named Patricia, who had 30 years of experience and zero patience for Clara's questions. "The catering is already arranged," Patricia said during their first meeting, her voice clipped. "Archambault Dining. They've catered every major Callaway event for a decade." "What's the menu?" "Foie gras, Scottish salmon, Wagyu beef, champagne service." Clara made notes. "How much does this cost?" Patricia looked at her like she'd asked what color the sky was. "Does it matter?" "Everything matters. How much?" $450 per plate, 1,200 guests. You do the math." Clara did the math. $540,000 for one dinner. "That seems excessive." "It's the standard." Patricia's tone made it clear this conversation was over. "Archambault is the best. Using anyone else would be an insult to our guests." Clara let it go, for now. She spent the next 3 days reviewing every aspect of the gala. The flowers, $80,000 worth of imported orchids. The entertainment, a string quartet that charged $30,000 for 4 hours. The venue, a historic mansion on Capitol Hill that cost $100,000 to rent for the night. Everything was expensive. Everything was elegant. Everything was designed to impress people who couldn't be impressed because they'd seen it all before. And Clara hated it. Not because it was wasteful, though it was, but because it felt hollow, performative, like Ethan was putting on a show to convince people he was something he wasn't. She was sitting in her office late one evening, staring at budget spreadsheets when Noah appeared in her doorway. The kid did that sometimes, just showed up silently, watching, never speaking unless directly asked a question, and even then only in whispers. "Hey, Noah," Clara said, setting down her pen. "Can't sleep?" He shook his head. "Me neither." "Want to come in?" Noah hesitated, then walked into her office and climbed into the chair across from her desk. His feet didn't touch the floor. He was holding a stuffed rabbit that looked like it had been through multiple wars. "What's your rabbit's name?" Clara asked. "Cotton," Noah whispered. "That's a good name." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Clara had learned that Noah didn't need conversation. He just needed presence. Someone who wouldn't force him to talk or perform or be anything other than a sad 8-year-old trying to survive. "Are you planning my mom's party?" Noah asked quietly. Clara's chest tightened. Your mom's party? The gala. Mom always planned it. She liked parties. His voice was barely audible. She was good at making people happy. Clara came around the desk and knelt in front of Noah's chair, putting herself at his eye level. I'm not trying to replace your mom, she said gently. Nobody could do that. I'm just trying to help your dad with the event. Is that okay? Noah looked at her with those devastating gray eyes. Dad's sad all the time now. I know. Are you going to make him happy? I'm going to try to help him. That's the best I can do. Noah seemed to consider this. Then he slid off the chair and walked out without another word, clutching cotton. Clara stayed kneeling on the floor, feeling the weight of expectation she hadn't signed up for. She wasn't just planning an event. She was trying to hold together a family that had fractured into pieces. The next morning, Patricia called an emergency meeting. We have a problem, she said, her face pale. Archambault canceled. Clara's stomach dropped. What? They called this morning, said they're overbooked, and can't accommodate our event. They're refunding the deposit. That's impossible. We booked them 6 months ago. Nevertheless, they've canceled. Patricia looked genuinely panicked. I've called every other high-end caterer in Seattle. Everyone's either booked or suddenly unavailable. It's like someone's paying them to refuse us. Clara's mind raced. Marcus. This had Marcus written all over it. How much time do we have? The gala is in 9 days. 9 days to find catering for 1,200 people. Patricia's hand shook. This is a disaster. We need to postpone. We can't postpone. The invitations are sent, the venue is booked, and postponing makes Ethan look weak. Then what do you suggest? We can't serve 1,200 people without a caterer. Clara thought about the velvet oak, about Mrs. Kim cooking pot roast in a kitchen with flickering lights, about the dozens of struggling restaurants she'd worked at over the years, places with talented chefs and no money for marketing, places that served real food to real people instead of pretentious tiny portions on oversized plates. We don't need Archambault, Clara said slowly. Excuse me? We don't need expensive caterers. We need good food and authentic stories. The idea was forming as she spoke. What if instead of one elite catering company, we hired 20 local restaurants? Small places, immigrant-owned, chef-driven, places that need the exposure and would kill for an opportunity like this. Patricia stared at her like she'd suggested serving hot dogs from a cart. You want to serve our elite guests food from food trucks? No. I want to serve them food from talented chefs who actually care about cooking instead of caterers who charge $450 a plate for reheated salmon. Clara pulled out her laptop. Think about the optics. Callaway Global Holdings supporting local businesses, investing in community, giving opportunities to people who deserve them. That's a better story than flying in foie gras from France. It's also completely insane. Maybe, but it's our only option. Clara stood. I need a list of every available commercial kitchen in the city and contact information for restaurant owners who might be interested. Can you get me that? Patricia looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Clara's expression stopped her. I'll have it by this afternoon, she said quietly. But if this fails, I'll take full responsibility. After Patricia left, Clara went to find Ethan. He was in his study with Noah, helping the kid with homework. It was one of the few times Clara had seen him actually relaxed, focused on something other than board votes and hostile takeovers. Can I talk to you? Clara asked from the doorway. Ethan looked up, saw her expression. Noah, go ask Mrs. Chen for a snack, okay? Noah gathered his books and left, giving Clara a small wave on his way out. What happened? Ethan asked. Clara explained. The canceled catering, the blocked alternatives, her plan to use local restaurants instead. Ethan listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. That's a huge risk, he finally said. I know. If the food is bad, if the service is unprofessional, if anything goes wrong, the entire city will crucify us. I know that too. Marcus is probably behind the cancellation. He's trying to sabotage the event, make me look incompetent in front of everyone who matters. So we don't give him what he expects. We give him something better. Clara leaned against the desk. Your guests expect luxury and exclusivity. They've been to 1,000 events just like this one. But if we give them something real, food with actual flavor, Stories about the people cooking it, a genuine connection to the community. That's memorable. That's different. Or it's a complete disaster that hands Marcus exactly what he wants. Maybe, but doing nothing guarantees failure. At least this way we're trying something. Ethan studied her face. You really believe this will work? I believe it's better than giving up. He smiled slightly. You sound like Elizabeth. She always said the biggest risk was playing it safe. It was the first time he'd mentioned his wife without his voice going flat. Clara took that as a good sign. So I can move forward with this? On one condition, I want to be involved. Not just signing checks, actually helping. Elizabeth loved these events because she got to meet people, hear their stories. I want to do that too. Done. Over the next week, Claire worked harder than she'd ever worked in her life. She visited 43 restaurants, met with chefs from Vietnam, Ethiopia, Mexico, India, Korea, tasted food that made her cry it was so good, heard stories about immigration, about building businesses from nothing, about dreams deferred and hopes kept alive through cooking. She hired 20 restaurants, gave each one a budget and creative freedom, told them to make their best dishes, the food that meant something to them, not what they thought rich people wanted to eat. Ethan came with her to half the meetings. Clara watched him transform during those visits, watched him ask questions and listen to answers and actually engage with people instead of just performing for them. Watched him taste a grandmother's tamales in a tiny kitchen in South Park and declare them the best thing he'd eaten in years. Noah came to a few meetings too. The kid was shy around strangers, but something about being in restaurant kitchens seemed to calm him. Maybe because kitchens were warm and busy and full of life. Maybe because nobody expected him to talk, just to taste and enjoy. At one Vietnamese restaurant in the International District, the owner, a woman named Lynn who'd fled Saigon in 1975, gave Noah a bowl of pho and told him it was magic soup that made sad people feel better. Noah ate 3 bowls. Meanwhile, Evelyn and Marcus were circling like sharks. I hear you're planning to serve our guests peasant food, Evelyn said one afternoon, cornering Clara outside the estate. How very democratic of you. It's called authentic cuisine, Clara replied. It's called desperation, and everyone's going to see through it. Evelyn's smile was venomous. You're not clever, Miss Bennett. You're just a waitress playing dress-up in my sister-in-law's world, and when this gala collapses, and it will collapse, Ethan will finally see you for what you are. A mistake. If I'm such a mistake, why do you care so much? Because you're influencing my brother to make ridiculous decisions. Because you're giving him false hope that he can survive without our help. And because when he fails, Noah suffers. That's what you don't understand. This isn't just about corporate politics. It's about that little boy's future. Then maybe you should spend less time trying to destroy your brother and more time actually caring about your nephew. Evelyn's face went cold. Be very careful, Miss Bennett. You don't know what you're dealing with. She walked away, heels clicking on the marble floors. Clara stood there shaking with anger and adrenaline. She'd never been good at playing political games, at smiling through veiled threats. She was a fighter, not a diplomat. That evening, she found Ethan in Noah's room, reading bedtime stories. The kid was already asleep, curled under dinosaur print blankets, breathing softly. Ethan looked up when Clara appeared in the doorway. He had a good day, Ethan whispered. Talked about the pho. Said it was the best thing he'd tasted since his mom made him chicken soup last year. That's progress. Yeah. Ethan carefully extracted himself from Noah's bed, turned on the nightlight, and followed Clara into the hallway. What's wrong? You look upset. Clara told him about the conversation with Evelyn. Ethan's expression hardened. She threatened you? Not directly, just reminded me that I don't belong here. That's bullshit, is it? Ethan, I've been here 2 weeks. Your sister's been part of this family her whole life. Your brother's been working in this company for a decade. And I'm a waitress who got fired for chasing a customer into the rain. Maybe Evelyn's right. Maybe I'm in over my head. Ethan walked to the window overlooking the grounds. Outside, the gardens were lit with subtle landscape lighting. Everything perfect and controlled. You want to know why Elizabeth loved the gala? He said quietly. It wasn't about the money or the prestige. It was about using our position to actually help people. She hated the performative charity, the big checks written for photo ops. She wanted to create real connections, real opportunities. He turned to face Clara. That's what you're doing. That's why this matters. Not because it'll save my reputation or win board votes, but because it's the right thing to do. And if it fails, then we fail doing something worthwhile instead of succeeding at something meaningless. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. I'm not used to people believing in me. Get used to it. The night before the gala, Clara couldn't sleep. She paced her room in the guest house, reviewing checklists, panicking about everything that could go wrong. At 2 a.m., she gave up and went for a walk around the grounds. She found Ethan sitting on the patio overlooking the lake, drinking scotch and staring at the water. Couldn't sleep either? Clara asked. Sleep's been hard for a while now. He gestured at the chair beside him. Join me? Clara sat. The night was cold and clear, stars visible despite Seattle's light pollution. Tomorrow decides everything, Ethan said. The gala, the board vote, my future with the company, Noah's future. No pressure. He laughed quietly. I keep thinking about what happens if Marcus wins. If I lose control of the company, lose custody of Noah's trust. He'd put the kid in boarding school, Clara. Some expensive prison where Noah would be surrounded by other rich kids' trauma and nobody would actually care about him. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. No, but I know you're not going to let it happen, and neither am I. Clara took the scotch glass from his hand and took a sip. It burned, going down. We've worked too hard. Those chefs have prepared too much. Noah has started talking again, Ethan, actually talking. About food and magic soup and things that make him happy. That's worth fighting for. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, with an expression she couldn't quite read. Thank you, he said softly. For what? For caring, for trying, for being exactly what this family needed without even knowing it. Something shifted in the air between them, something electric and terrifying and completely inappropriate given their employer-employee relationship. Clara stood quickly. I should get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. Clara. Good night, Ethan. She walked back to the guest house before he could say anything else, her heart hammering in her chest. This was dangerous. This whole situation was dangerous. She couldn't afford to develop feelings for her boss, for a billionaire widower with a traumatized son and a family trying to destroy him. But as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she knew it was already too late. She cared. About Ethan. About Noah. About this broken family trying to rebuild itself. And caring made everything infinitely more complicated. The morning of the gala arrived with perfect Seattle weather, cold, gray, and threatening rain. Clara was up at 5, coordinating with 20 different restaurant teams, making sure deliveries were on schedule, that the venue setup was progressing, that every single detail was accounted for. Patricia had transformed from skeptic to cautious believer over the past week. She'd seen the food, met the chefs, understood what Clara was trying to accomplish. I'll admit I was wrong about this, Patricia said during their final walkthrough of the venue. If it works, it'll be extraordinary. And if it doesn't, then we'll all be looking for new jobs Monday morning. The venue was a mansion from the 1920s, all ornate woodwork and crystal chandeliers. Instead of hiding the building's character under generic luxury decor, Clara had worked with the restaurants to create intimate food stations throughout the different rooms. Each station featured a chef, their story displayed on elegant cards, their food served with pride instead of pretension. By 4 p.m., everything was in place. The flowers, locally sourced wildflowers instead of imported orchids, added color without overwhelming the space. The string quartet had been replaced with a jazz trio that actually had personality. The whole event felt warm, lived in, real. Claire went back to the estate to change. Emma had helped her pick out a dress, simple black, elegant without being showy, appropriate for someone who worked for the host instead of being the host. You look terrified, Emma said, zipping up the back. I am terrified. You're also amazing. You built this whole thing from nothing in 9 days. That's insane. Or stupid. Sometimes those are the same thing. Emma hugged her. Go show those rich assholes what real food tastes like. Clara arrived at the venue at 6. Guests were already arriving, Seattle's elite in tuxedos and gowns, stepping out of town cars and looking around with expressions ranging from curiosity to confusion. This wasn't what they'd expected. Ethan stood at the entrance greeting people, looking devastating in a perfectly tailored tux, Noah was with him, also in a small tux, holding his father's hand and trying to be brave in front of strangers. Clara hung back, watching the crowd flow in. Politicians, tech CEOs, old money families. People who could make or break Ethan's reputation with a single comment. Marcus arrived with Evelyn, both of them scanning the venue like predators looking for weaknesses. Marcus caught Clara's eye and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. The dinner service began at 7. Clara watched from the sidelines as guests discovered the food stations, as they read the stories about the chefs, as they tasted pho and injera and mole and kimchi and dozens of other dishes they'd probably never experienced before. At first there was skepticism. These people were used to tiny portions of molecular gastronomy, not generous servings of actual food. But then something shifted. A tech CEO tried Lin's pho and declared it transcendent. A politician's wife had tears in her eyes after hearing the story of the Ethiopian restaurant owner who'd fled civil war. A group of investors gathered around the Mexican station, arguing about which sauce was better, getting genuinely invested in food instead of just consuming it. The room filled with energy, real energy. People weren't performing anymore. They were actually enjoying themselves. Clara found Ethan in the crowd. He was talking to a group of board members, and they were actually listening instead of plotting. He caught her eye across the room and smiled. Then Marcus found a microphone. "Can I have everyone's attention?" His voice cut through the conversations. "I'd like to say a few words about my brother and this wonderful event." The room went quiet. Clara's stomach dropped. "When Ethan first told us about his vision for tonight, I'll admit I was skeptical," Marcus continued, his smile venomous. "A charity gala featuring food from struggling local restaurants instead of our usual caterers? It seemed unconventional, but now that I'm here experiencing this event, I understand what he was trying to do." He paused for effect. He was trying to cover up his incompetence with sentimentality. He was trying to distract us from the fact that Callaway Global Holdings has lost 12% of its value under his leadership. He was trying to make us feel good about his poor decisions by wrapping them in a story about helping the community. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "And the sad thing is," Marcus went on, "it almost worked. The food is good. The stories are touching. But this isn't what this company needs. We need strong leadership, not emotional manipulation. We need someone who makes decisions based on logic, not grief." Clara saw Ethan's face go pale. "So I'm announcing tonight, in front of all of you, that the board will be voting tomorrow to remove Ethan as CEO of Callaway Global Holdings. And I'm confident we have the votes to succeed, because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone who's drowning is pull them out of the water before they drown everyone around them." The room erupted in chaos. People talking, arguing, looking between Marcus and Ethan with expressions of shock and calculation. Clara didn't think. She just moved. She grabbed a microphone from a confused staff member and turned it on. "Mr. Callaway is right about one thing," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "This event is unconventional. It's not what you expected. It's not what any of us expected." Everyone turned to look at her. 1,200 pairs of eyes. Clara's heart hammered, but she kept talking. "I'm Clara Bennett. I'm Mr. Callaway's executive assistant. 2 weeks ago, I was a waitress at a failing restaurant. I had no experience with events like this, no connections in this world, no business being put in charge of something so important." She saw Evelyn smiling, thinking Clara was about to prove Marcus's point. "But Mr. Callaway took a chance on me anyway. Not because he was being reckless, but because he believed that good ideas can come from anywhere. That competence isn't about pedigree, it's about effort. That sometimes the people who understand struggle are the ones best equipped to create change." Clara gestured around the room. "Every chef here tonight has a story. Stories about immigration, about building something from nothing, about working 3 jobs to keep their dreams alive. Those stories matter. Those people matter. And a CEO who recognizes that, who uses his platform to elevate voices that usually get ignored, that's not weakness. That's leadership." She looked directly at Marcus. "You can vote him out tomorrow. You can take his company and put it back in the hands of people who only care about profit margins. But you can't take away what he's built here tonight. You can't take away the fact that he chose substance over performance, community over exclusivity, real impact over empty gestures." Clara's voice shook slightly, but she pushed through. "Ethan Callaway isn't perfect. He's grieving. He's tired. He's fighting battles most of us can't even imagine. But he's still showing up, still trying, still fighting for his son's future and his company's integrity and a vision of business that actually means something. She turned off the microphone and set it down. The room was completely silent. Then someone started clapping. It was one of the board members, an older woman Clara vaguely recognized. Then another person joined. And another. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding. Marcus's face turned purple with rage. Ethan was staring at Clara like he'd never seen her before. And Clara, standing in front of 1,200 people in a dress she'd bought on sale and shoes that hurt her feet, realized something fundamental. She'd stopped surviving. She'd started fighting, and there was no going back from that. The applause died down slowly, reluctantly, like people didn't want to let go of the moment. Clara stood frozen in the middle of the room, adrenaline crashing through her system, suddenly aware that she'd just publicly defended a billionaire in front of Seattle's entire power structure. Marcus recovered first. His smile returned, colder now, more calculated. "How touching," he said into his own microphone. "A passionate defense from someone who's known my brother for all of 2 weeks. Tell me, Miss Bennett, how much is he paying you to humiliate yourself like this?" "Nobody's paying me to tell the truth," Clara shot back before she could stop herself. "The truth?" Marcus laughed. "The truth is you're a waitress playing assistant. The truth is my brother hired you because you're desperate enough to do whatever he asks. The truth is you're scared." Ethan's voice cut through the room. He'd found another microphone, was walking toward his brother with slow, deliberate steps. "You're terrified that I might actually succeed despite everything you've done to sabotage me." The crowd shifted, sensing blood in the water. "I haven't sabotaged anything," Marcus said. "I've tried to protect this company from your increasingly erratic behavior. By bribing caterers to cancel, by spreading rumors to the press, by trying to turn the board against me at every opportunity, by doing what's necessary to preserve our family's legacy." "Our family's legacy?" Ethan's voice went quiet, dangerous. "You mean the legacy Elizabeth built? The one you tried to steal when she died? The one you've been systematically dismantling ever since?" Marcus's composure cracked slightly. "Don't you dare bring Elizabeth into this." "Why not? She's the reason you're doing this, isn't she?" Ethan moved closer. "You were always jealous that she chose me, that she saw through your charm to what you really are. And now that she's gone, you think you can take everything she built and claim it as your own. You have no idea what you're talking about, don't I?" Ethan turned to address the room. "My brother has been positioning himself to take over this company since the day of Elizabeth's funeral. He's made promises, offered deals, bought loyalty from people who should know better. And tomorrow, he'll try to force a vote that removes me as CEO so he can install himself in my place." He paused, letting that sink in. "But here's what Marcus doesn't understand. This company isn't about money or power or family politics. It's about creating something meaningful, about using our resources to actually help people instead of just accumulating wealth. That's what Elizabeth believed. That's what I believe. And if the board votes to remove me tomorrow, I'll accept that decision. But I won't apologize for trying to do the right thing, even when it's inconvenient." The room was silent again. People were watching Marcus, waiting for his response. Marcus's smile had disappeared entirely. "You're a fool, Ethan. A sentimental fool who thinks good intentions are enough to run a multi-billion-dollar company. Maybe, but I'd rather be a fool with integrity than a success without it." Marcus set down his microphone and walked out. Evelyn followed, her heels clicking furiously against the hardwood floor. Several board members exchanged glances, then trailed after them. The remaining guests stood in uncomfortable silence. Then the older woman who'd started the applause earlier approached Ethan. "That took courage," she said quietly. "Elizabeth would be proud." "Thank you, Margaret. The vote tomorrow won't be easy. Marcus has made a lot of promises." "I know, but he showed his hand tonight. Attacked you publicly, tried to humiliate you in front of your guests." Margaret glanced at Clara. "And your assistant reminded everyone what leadership actually looks like. That matters." She walked away, leaving Ethan and Clara standing together in the center of the room. The jazz trio, sensing the need for distraction, started playing again. Conversations resumed, quieter now, more subdued. The gala continued, but the energy had shifted. People weren't just enjoying food anymore. They were thinking, calculating, choosing sides. Clara felt hands shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind exhaustion and the dawning realization of what she'd just done. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I shouldn't have—" "Don't." Ethan's voice was firm. "Don't apologize for defending me. Don't apologize for saying what needed to be said. I made it worse. Marcus is going to use that against you, use me against you." "Clara." Ethan turned to face her fully. "You were magnificent." She looked up at him, at those storm-gray eyes that had looked so exhausted 2 weeks ago and now held something else. Something intense and complicated and terrifying. "I need some air," Clara said, breaking eye contact. "I'll be right back." She walked out onto the mansion's terrace before Ethan could respond. The night air was cold against her flushed face. Below, Seattle's light spread out like scattered diamonds, beautiful and distant and completely indifferent to the drama playing out in this historic building. Clara leaned against the railing and tried to slow her racing heart. What had she been thinking, grabbing that microphone? She wasn't qualified to defend Ethan in front of investors and politicians. She was a waitress who'd been playing executive assistant for 2 weeks. Marcus was right. She was in over her head. "You okay?" Clara turned. Patricia had followed her outside, carrying 2 glasses of wine. "I just destroyed my boss's reputation in front of 1,200 people," Clara said. "So, no, not really okay. You defended your boss against a hostile takeover attempt." Patricia handed her one of the wine glasses. "There's a difference." "Is there? Because I'm pretty sure I just gave Marcus exactly the ammunition he needs. Look at the desperate waitress defending her meal ticket. Or you gave the board something to think about." Patricia took a sip of wine. "I've worked in this world for 30 years, Clara. I've seen a lot of corporate coups, a lot of family drama disguised as business strategy. And I've never seen anyone stand up the way you just did. Not for a paycheck, not out of obligation, but because you actually believe in what Ethan's trying to do. That doesn't make me qualified." "No, but it makes you rare." Patricia looked out at the city. "You want to know why Elizabeth loved planning this gala? It wasn't about the party. It was about reminding everyone, including herself, that money is supposed to mean something, that wealth without purpose is just numbers in an account." "Did you know her? Elizabeth?" "We worked together on events for 5 years. She was brilliant, driven, could be absolutely ruthless when she needed to be." Patricia smiled sadly. "But she also cared, really cared, about people, about impact, about leaving the world better than she found it. Ethan's trying to honor that, and you're helping him. Don't apologize for that." They stood in silence for a moment, drinking wine and watching the city breathe. "The board vote is tomorrow at 10 a.m., Patricia said. "Whatever happens, you should be proud of what you built tonight. Even if it all falls apart, especially then, because you tried." Back inside, the gala was winding down. Guests were leaving, thanking Ethan for a memorable evening, some with genuine warmth, others with polite distance. The chefs were packing up their stations, tired but happy, already talking about the contacts they'd made and opportunities that might come from this exposure. Clara found Lynn carefully wrapping leftover ingredients. "Thank you for tonight," Claire said. "Your pho was incredible." Lynn looked up, her weathered face breaking into a smile. "That little boy, Noah. He came back 3 times for more soup. Said it made him feel better." Clara's throat tightened. "It did. I saw him. You did a good thing tonight, bringing us here, giving us this chance." Lynn touched Clara's hand. "Whatever happens with the politics, with the business, remember that. You helped people. That matters more than money." After Lynn left, Clara helped Patricia coordinate the cleanup. By midnight, the venue was empty except for staff breaking down tables and chairs. Clara's feet ached. Her head pounded. She wanted nothing more than to collapse into bed and sleep for a week. Instead, she had to face tomorrow's board vote. Ethan was waiting in the parking lot when Clara finally emerged. He was leaning against his car, tie loosened, looking exhausted and wired at the same time. "Where's Noah?" Clara asked. "Home with Mrs. Chen. I sent him back after the confrontation with Marcus. Didn't want him exposed to more drama tonight." Ethan straightened up. "Get in. I'll drive you back." "I can get a ride with Patricia? Please. I want to talk to you." Clara climbed into the passenger seat. The car smelled like leather and Ethan's cologne, something subtle and expensive that probably had a French name she couldn't pronounce. They drove in silence for a few minutes, Seattle's empty streets sliding past the windows. "I'm getting fired tomorrow, aren't I?" Clara finally said. Ethan glanced at her. "Why would you think that?" "Because I made a scene. Because I stepped out of my role. Because I probably just handed Marcus everything he needs to paint you as unstable. Or you showed the board that I inspire loyalty in my staff. That I've built a team that believes in our mission enough to defend it publicly." Ethan turned onto the highway. "Marcus is right about one thing. I am making unconventional decisions. Hiring you was unconventional. Planning tonight's gala the way we did was unconventional. But unconventional doesn't mean wrong. You sound like you're trying to convince yourself." "Maybe I am." He was quiet for a moment. "Do you know what Elizabeth said to me the night before she died?" Clara shook her head. "We were in bed talking about the company, about Noah's future, and she said, promise me something. If anything happens to me, don't let them turn you into what they want. Stay weird, stay difficult, stay yourself." His voice cracked slightly. "I didn't know she was going to die the next day. Didn't know those would be some of the last words she ever said to me. But I promised. And I've been trying to keep that promise ever since." Clara didn't know what to say. The grief in his voice was so raw, so immediate, like the wound was still fresh after 14 months. "She would have liked you," Ethan continued. "Elizabeth had radar for authentic people. She could spot bullshit from a mile away. You would have driven her crazy with your stubbornness, but she would have respected it." "I'm sorry I never got to meet her." "Me too." They pulled into the estate grounds. The house was dark except for a few security lights. Emma's light was on in the guest house, probably waiting up to hear about the gala. Ethan parked but didn't turn off the engine. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said, "I want you to know that hiring you wasn't a mistake. Trusting you wasn't a mistake. You've done more in 2 weeks than my entire executive team has done in a year. That's a low bar," he smiled. "Maybe. But it's still true." Clara reached for the door handle, but Ethan's voice stopped her. "Clara." She turned back. "If I lose tomorrow, if Marcus gets the votes and forces me out, I want you to stay on with the company. Work for whoever takes over. Don't let your future be tied to my failure." "I'm not working for Marcus." "Even if it means losing your job, losing your salary. Especially then." Clara met his eyes. "You hired me because I chose dignity over money. That doesn't change just because the money got bigger." Something shifted in Ethan's expression. He leaned closer, close enough that Clara could feel the heat of his body, could see the flecks of darker blue in his gray eyes. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. For a moment, she wanted him to. Then reality crashed back. He was her boss, a grieving widower, a man whose entire life was falling apart. She was his employee, hired 2 weeks ago, completely inappropriate for anything beyond a professional relationship. Clara pulled back and opened the door. "Good night, Ethan." She was halfway to the guest house when he called out, "Clara!" She turned around. Ethan was standing by the car, hands in his pockets, looking young and lost and human in a way that made her chest ache. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything." Clara nodded and walked inside before she could do something stupid like run back and kiss him anyway. Emma was waiting in the living room, laptop open, clearly in the middle of a research binge. "The gala's all over social media," she said without preamble. "People are posting photos of the food, talking about the chefs, sharing the stories. It's trending on Twitter. Hashtag Callaway Gala is the #3 topic in Seattle right now. Is that good?" "It's something." Emma turned the laptop to show Clara. The screen was filled with photos, guests enjoying pho, chefs smiling at their stations, candid shots of Ethan talking to restaurant owners. And then the videos started. Someone had filmed Clara's speech, all of it, her defense of Ethan, her challenge to Marcus, everything. The video had 47,000 views and counting. "Oh no," Clara whispered. "Oh yes, you went viral, sis." Emma scrolled through the comments. "Most people think you're brave. Some think you're sleeping with Ethan. A few think you're a plant hired to make Marcus look bad. Everyone's got an opinion." Clara sank onto the couch. "This is a nightmare." "Or it's momentum. Look at this." Emma pulled up a news article published 20 minutes ago. Seattle Tech CEO praises Callaway Global's community-focused gala. Says it's the kind of corporate responsibility the industry needs more of. She clicked to another article. 3 board members publicly supporting Ethan's leadership vision. Another click. Marcus Calloway's history of hostile business tactics. Someone leaked this to the press tonight, detailed his attempts to force out partners at previous companies, settlements paid to avoid lawsuits, allegations of manipulation and bribery. Clara's eyes widened. Who leaked that? No idea, but the timing is interesting, right? Same night Marcus tries to humiliate Ethan publicly. They stayed up until 3 a.m. watching the story unfold across social media and news sites. The narrative was shifting. What had started as Marcus's attack on Ethan's competence was becoming a story about corporate ethics, family loyalty, and the fight for a company's soul. Clara finally fell asleep on the couch, Emma's laptop still glowing beside her. She woke 4 hours later to her phone buzzing. Multiple messages from Patricia, from other staff members, from numbers she didn't recognize. One text stood out. From Ethan. Board meeting moved up to 8 a.m. Marcus is trying to force the vote before more negative press comes out about him. Be there. Clara showered in 5 minutes, threw on the same slacks and blouse from her first day, and ran to the main house. The boardroom was already filling up when she arrived. All 12 board members present, plus Ethan, Marcus, Evelyn, and several lawyers Clara didn't recognize. Marcus looked furious. Evelyn looked nervous. Ethan looked calm in a way that was probably false but convincing enough. Clara took her seat against the wall, pulled out her notebook, and tried to steady her breathing. Margaret, the older woman from last night, called the meeting to order. We're here to vote on Marcus Calloway's motion to remove Ethan Calloway as CEO of Calloway Global Holdings, she said formally. Before we vote, both parties will have an opportunity to make a final statement. Marcus stood first. I'll be brief, he said. My brother is not capable of leading this company. The evidence is clear. Declining profits, poor decision-making, emotional instability. Last night's spectacle only confirmed what we all know. Ethan is letting grief cloud his judgment, and the company is suffering because of it. He sat down. Ethan stood. My brother is right about one thing, he said. I am grieving. I miss my wife every single day. I struggle with the weight of running this company alone. I make decisions that other people don't understand. He paused. But grief doesn't equal incompetence. And unconventional doesn't mean wrong. I've spent the last 14 months trying to honor Elizabeth's vision for this company, a vision where profit and purpose coexist, where we use our resources to create real change instead of just accumulating wealth. Ethan looked around the table. Last night wasn't a spectacle. It was a demonstration. We proved that Calloway Global Holdings can support local businesses, create opportunities for struggling entrepreneurs, and still deliver an experience our stakeholders value. We proved that doing good and doing well aren't mutually exclusive. He pulled out his tablet and projected numbers onto the screen. These are the commitments made last night by attendees. 3 new investment partnerships. 5 corporate clients interested in our community development projects. 2 major donors pledging support for our charitable initiatives. The total value of these commitments is $87 million. Gasps around the table. That's more than we generated from the last 3 traditional galas combined, Ethan continued. And it came from being authentic, from taking risks, from trusting someone like Clara Bennett, who had the courage to build something meaningful instead of something safe. He looked directly at Marcus. You can vote me out. You can install my brother as CEO, but you'll be choosing short-term stability over long-term vision. You'll be choosing fear over courage, and you'll be betraying everything Elizabeth built. Ethan sat down. Margaret looked around the table. Any questions before we vote? One of the men in identical suits raised his hand. I have one. For Miss Bennett. Clara's stomach dropped. Everyone turned to look at her. You've been working here for 2 weeks, the man said. In that time, you've observed Mr. Calloway's leadership up close. In your professional opinion, is he capable of running this company? Clara stood on shaking legs. I'm not qualified to have a professional opinion about running a multi-billion-dollar company, she said honestly. 2 weeks ago, I was serving pot roast to ungrateful customers for minimum wage plus tips. A few people smiled. But I can tell you what I've seen, Clara continued. I've seen Ethan work 16-hour days while still making time to read bedtime stories to his son. I've seen him treat restaurant workers with the same respect he shows investors. I've seen him make difficult choices that prioritize people over profit, integrity over optics. She looked at Marcus. I've also seen his brother sabotage him at every turn, bribe vendors, spread rumors, try to destroy him publicly. And through all of that, Ethan has remained focused on doing the right thing. That's not incompetence, that's strength. Clara sat back down, heart hammering. Margaret nodded. Thank you. Now we vote. All in favor of removing Ethan Callaway as CEO. 4 hands went up. The same 4 who'd voted with Marcus at the preliminary measure. All opposed? 7 hands went up. Margaret smiled slightly. The motion fails. Ethan Callaway remains CEO of Callaway Global Holdings. Marcus stood so fast his chair fell over. This is a mistake. You're all making a terrible mistake. The vote is final, Margaret said calmly. Marcus stormed out. Evelyn followed, but she paused at the door, looking back at Ethan with an expression Clara couldn't quite read. Regret, maybe. Or just calculation about her next move. The board members filed out, some congratulating Ethan, others leaving quickly without comment. When the room was empty except for Ethan and Clara, he slumped in his chair and let out a long breath. I can't believe that worked, he said. I can't believe I got asked a question. You handled it perfectly. I handled it honestly. That's all I know how to do. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, with those storm gray eyes that had seen too much loss and were just now starting to remember hope. Clara, His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression changed completely. What's wrong? Clara asked. It's Mrs. Chen. Noah's school called. He's been in a fight. They're sending him home. They found Noah in his room, sitting on his bed with a black eye and split lip. Mrs. Chen hovered anxiously by the door. What happened? Ethan asked, kneeling in front of his son. Noah didn't answer, just stared at the floor. Noah, buddy, I need you to tell me what happened. Still nothing. Ethan looked helplessly at Mrs. Chen. The school said another boy was saying things, Mrs. Chen explained quietly, about Noah's mother, about the family. Noah hit him. Ethan's jaw tightened. What kind of things? I don't know the details. The principal will call you this afternoon. After Mrs. Chen left, Ethan tried again. Noah, please talk to me. But Noah had shut down completely. The progress they'd made over the past 2 weeks, the talking about magic soup, the smiles at the restaurant kitchens, had disappeared. He was back to being that silent, traumatized kid from Clara's first day. I'll handle this, Ethan said, his voice strained. You can go back to work. Clara hesitated. Are you sure? Yeah, I need to talk to the school, figure out what happened. Clara left them there, father and son, both drowning in different ways. She spent the rest of the day fielding calls about the gala, coordinating with the restaurants about payment and future opportunities, trying to turn the momentum from last night into something sustainable. But her mind kept drifting back to Noah's black eye, to the silence that had returned, to Ethan's helpless expression. That evening, she found Ethan in his study, drinking scotch and staring at nothing. How's Noah? She asked from the doorway. Suspended for 3 days. The other kids' parents are threatening to sue. Ethan laughed bitterly. Apparently, defending your dead mother's honor is grounds for expulsion at elite private schools. What did the kids say? That Elizabeth killed herself, that the car accident wasn't an accident, that she wanted to escape our family. His voice was flat. None of which is true, but Noah's 8 years old. He doesn't understand the difference between cruel rumors and reality. Clara walked into the study and sat across from him. What can I do? Nothing. There's nothing anyone can do. My wife is dead, my son is traumatized, and apparently the whole city thinks they know our family better than we know ourselves. That's not true. Isn't it? Ethan poured more scotch. You've been here 2 weeks, Clara. You've seen a fraction of what this life is really like. The constant scrutiny, the invasive questions, the assumption that our pain is public property, and now Noah's paying the price for it. So what are you going to do? I don't know. Pull him out of school, hire tutors, lock us both in this house and never leave. He was spiraling. Clara could see it. The victory from this morning had been replaced by the crushing reality of everything that victory couldn't fix. That won't help him, Clara said quietly. And what will? Therapy hasn't helped. Time hasn't helped. Love hasn't helped. What's left? Clara thought about her own childhood, about losing her father, then her mother, about Emma shutting down for months after the funeral, barely speaking, barely eating. What helped Emma was purpose, she said. something to focus on besides the pain, something that made her feel like she had control over at least one part of her life. Noah's 8. So give him an 8-year-old's version of purpose. Let him help with something. Let him feel useful instead of broken. Ethan looked at her like she'd just spoken a foreign language. How? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. We? Yeah, we. Clara stood. You hired me to help you navigate this mess. That includes helping with Noah. If you want me to back off, say so. But I'm not going anywhere just because things got complicated. For the first time that evening, something like relief crossed Ethan's face. Thank you, he said quietly. Clara left him in the study and went to find Noah. The kid was still in his room, lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling. His black eye looked worse now, swollen and purple. Can I come in? Clara asked. Noah shrugged. Clara sat on the edge of his bed. That looks like it hurts. It's fine. You know, when I was your age, I punched a kid who said mean things about my mom, too. Noah looked at her. Really? Really? Got suspended for a week. My mom was furious, but also kind of proud. Clara smiled. Defending people you love is important, even when it gets you in trouble. The principal said I shouldn't resort to violence. The principal's probably right, but sometimes words aren't enough. Clara paused. What did that kid say about your mom? Noah's face crumpled. He said she didn't love us, that she wanted to leave, that the accident was on purpose. And you know that's not true, right? I don't know anything anymore. Noah's voice broke. Everyone says different things. Aunt Evelyn says Mom would want Dad to move on. Uncle Marcus says Mom would be disappointed in how Dad's running the company. The kids at school say Mom was sad. I don't remember if she was sad. I was only 7. What if I forgot? Clara's heart broke. Noah, listen to me. Your mom loved you. I never met her, but I know that's true because your dad talks about her all the time. About how much she cared, how hard she fought to make the world better. People who love like that don't just give up. Then why did she die? Because sometimes bad things happen to good people. Not because they wanted to, not because anyone deserved it, just because the world isn't fair. Noah was crying now, silent tears running down his face. Clara pulled him into a hug, and he clung to her like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting under his feet. They sat like that for a long time. When Noah finally pulled back, he wiped his eyes and looked at her seriously. Clara? Yeah? Are you going to leave too? The question hit her like a punch. What? Everyone leaves. Mom left. The other assistants Dad hired quit after a few weeks. Even Mrs. Chen says she's getting too old for this job. Noah's voice was small. Are you going to leave? Clara looked at this kid, this broken, brave 8-year-old kid who'd already lost so much and was terrified of losing more. I'm not going anywhere, she said, and meant it. Even though she had no idea what she'd just promised, even though staying meant diving deeper into a family that was falling apart, even though she was starting to develop feelings for Ethan that were completely inappropriate and could destroy everything, none of that mattered, because Noah needed someone to stay, and Clara had always been better at staying than leaving. That promise to Noah changed everything. Clara couldn't just show up, do her job, and leave anymore. She was invested now, tangled up in this family's mess in ways that went far beyond an employment contract and a paycheck. Over the next 3 weeks, she watched Ethan restructure the entire company's community investment strategy based on the success of the gala. He created a fund specifically for supporting small businesses owned by immigrants and low-income entrepreneurs, hired 2 of the chefs from the gala as consultants, started talking about opening a culinary training center. Marcus had gone quiet after the board vote, but Clara knew that silence was dangerous. People like Marcus didn't just give up. They regrouped and came back meaner. Evelyn, surprisingly, had started showing up at the estate more often, not to see Ethan, but to spend time with Noah. She'd bring him books, take him to museums, sit with him during his suspension, and help with homework. It was awkward and stilted. Evelyn clearly had no idea how to relate to children, but she was trying. I don't trust her, Emma said one evening as they watched Evelyn leave through the guest house window. She's been working with Marcus this whole time. Why the sudden change? Maybe she actually cares about Noah, Clara said. People can surprise you. Or she's playing a longer game. Clara didn't have an answer for that. Noah's suspension ended, but Ethan pulled him from the private school anyway. Too much scrutiny, too many cruel kids with parents who traded in gossip like currency. Instead, he hired a team of tutors who came to the estate. Noah seemed relieved. School had been one more place where he felt exposed, vulnerable. Clara started incorporating Noah into her work whenever possible. Let him help organize files, deliver messages to staff, even sit in on meetings when appropriate. The kid was smart, observant, and once he started talking more, he asked questions that made everyone think harder about what they were doing. "Why do we invest in tech companies but not food companies?" Noah asked during one strategy session. His black eye finally faded to a yellowish green. "Food is more important than apps." The room went silent. Then Ethan laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. "You know what, buddy? You're absolutely right." 2 days later, Callaway Global Holdings announced a new investment initiative in sustainable food systems. Clara watched father and son work together sometimes, seeing the ways they were healing each other. Ethan became more present, more engaged. Noah became more confident, more willing to speak up. But the thing between Clara and Ethan kept growing, unspoken, but impossible to ignore. It was in the way he looked at her during meetings, the way his hand would brush hers when passing documents, the late-night conversations in his study that started about work and drifted into personal territory, childhood memories, dreams deferred, fears about the future. Clara knew it was dangerous, knew that crossing that line could destroy everything she'd built here. But knowing something and stopping it were two different things. The moment came on a Thursday night, 6 weeks after the gala. Clara was working late in her office, reviewing proposals for the Culinary Training Center, when Ethan knocked on her door. "You're still here," he said. "So are you. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about the training center location. The building in Georgetown is perfect, but the zoning issues are complicated." "We'll figure it out. We always do." Ethan walked into her office and sat in the chair across from her desk. He looked tired but good, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of his usual button-down. More human, less CEO. "Clara, I need to tell you something." Her heart kicked into overdrive. "Okay, I'm not good at this, at talking about feelings. Elizabeth always said I processed emotions like I was reviewing a business proposal, analytically, carefully, never taking risks." He paused. "But she also said that when I finally did open up, it was worth the wait." "Ethan, let me finish, please." He leaned forward. "These past 6 weeks have been the hardest and the best since Elizabeth died. Hard because I'm still grieving, still struggling. Best because you and Emma moved into the guest house and suddenly this massive empty estate feels like a home again. Because Noah is talking and laughing and asking questions about food systems. Because I wake up and actually want to face the day instead of just surviving it." Clara's throat tightened. "And that's because of you," Ethan continued. "Not just the work you do, though that's exceptional, but the way you care, the way you fight, the way you handed back a $1 bill because your dignity was worth more than a tip." "I was just angry. You were magnificent, and you've been magnificent every day since." He stood up, moved closer. "I know this is complicated. I'm your boss, I'm a widower with a traumatized son. I'm still figuring out how to be a single father and run a company and not lose my mind. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel this." Clara stood too, her pulse racing. "Feel what?" "That I'm falling for you. That I've been since you chased me into the rain and told me to buy some self-respect." His voice was quiet, intense. "And if you don't feel the same way, if this is completely one-sided, tell me now and we'll never speak of it again. But if there's any chance..." Clara kissed him, just stepped forward and kissed him, because words felt inadequate for everything she was feeling. All the fear and longing and absolute certainty that this was either the best decision or the worst mistake of her life. Ethan kissed her back like he'd been waiting for permission. His hands came up to cup her face, gentle and urgent at the same time. Clara's hands found his hair, pulling him closer, and for a moment the whole world narrowed to this. Just the two of them, finally honest about what had been building between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I'm still your boss," he said. "I know." "This could get complicated. It's already complicated. Noah comes first, always. I wouldn't want it any other way." Ethan pulled back to look at her. "I can't promise this will be easy. My family will lose their minds. The media will have a field day, and I'm still a mess, Clara. I'm still grieving. There are days I can barely get out of bed. I'm a mess too. I was a waitress 6 weeks ago. I have no business running community investment strategies or planning charity galas or falling for a billionaire. Clara touched his face. But here we are. Here we are, he echoed and kissed her again. They kept it quiet for 2 weeks. Not because they were ashamed, but because they needed time to figure out what this was before everyone else weighed in with opinions. Emma figured it out in 3 days. You're sleeping with him, she said over breakfast in the guest house. I'm not sleeping with him. But you're something with him. You have that look. What look? The I'm falling in love and terrified look. I've seen it before, usually right before you make questionable life choices. Clara threw a piece of toast at her. This is not a questionable life choice. He's a billionaire widower with a traumatized kid and a family that wants to destroy him. It's the definition of questionable. Do you want me to end it? Emma was quiet for a moment. No. I've watched you together. I've seen how he looks at you, how you are with Noah. It's real, messy and complicated and probably going to blow up in your face, but real. She grinned. Just don't name your first kid after me. That's too much pressure. We're not anywhere near that conversation. Yet. Noah figured it out next. Kids were observant like that, noticed the small things adults thought they were hiding. He didn't say anything directly, just started drawing pictures. One showed 3 stick figures standing in front of a house, a tall one labeled Dad, a smaller one labeled Me, and a medium one labeled Clara. They were all holding hands. Clara found the drawing on her desk one morning and had to sit down until her eyes stopped burning. That evening, she knocked on Noah's door. Can we talk? Noah looked up from his book. Okay. Clara sat on the edge of his bed. I saw your drawing, the one with the 3 people. Do you like it? I love it, but I want to make sure you're okay with me and your dad spending time together. Noah tilted his head, considering. Are you going to be my new mom? No? Nobody can replace your mom. She'll always be your mom, and that's important. But you're going to stay? Yes. I promised you that, remember? And you and Dad like each other? Like, really like each other? Clara smiled. Yeah, we really like each other. Noah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Mom would like you. She always said Dad needed someone who wouldn't let him be boring. You're definitely not boring. Clara laughed and hugged him. Thank you, Noah. The media found out 3 weeks later. Someone leaked photos of Clara and Ethan having dinner at a quiet restaurant in Ballard. Nothing scandalous, just the 2 of them talking over wine and pasta, but enough for the tabloids to run with it. Billionaire, CEO. Dating. Former waitress, gold digger or genuine love. Ethan Calloway moves on. New girlfriend. Just months after wife's death, from minimum wage to mansion, the Clara Bennett story. The stories were brutal. Half painted Clara as a manipulative opportunist who'd seduced a grieving widower for his money. The other half painted her as a naive victim being used by a powerful man. Neither version was true, but truth didn't matter in the court of public opinion. Emma wanted to fight back. We should sue, or at least release a statement. And say what? That I really do love him and I'm not after his money? They won't believe it anyway. Clara scrolled through another article calling her a social climber with dubious intentions. The best thing we can do is ignore it. Easy for you to say. They're not calling you a gold digger. Actually, they are. I've been called worse. But the media attention did something unexpected. It forced Ethan and Clara to define what they were to each other, to make a choice about going public or staying hidden. They chose public. Ethan released a statement through the company's PR team. I'm grateful to have found someone who reminds me that life continues after loss, that happiness is still possible, and that authenticity matters more than appearances. Clara Bennett is an exceptional person who has brought light back into my family's life. How she came into our lives is nobody's business but ours. Simple, direct, unapologetic. The media circus intensified for about a week, then moved on to the next scandal. Seattle's elite had opinions, some supportive, most judgmental. But Clara had stopped caring what Seattle's elite thought somewhere around the time Marcus tried to humiliate her at the gala. Marcus himself had been surprisingly silent. Too silent. The attack came on a Tuesday morning, 4 months after Clara's first day at Callaway Global Holdings. She was in her office when James appeared, looking shaken. "Miss Bennett, you need to see this." He handed her his tablet. On the screen was a press release from Marcus Callaway's lawyer. Marcus Callaway, concerned for the welfare of his nephew Noah Callaway, is filing for emergency custody based on evidence of an unstable home environment. Ethan Callaway's recent erratic behavior, including his relationship with an employee of questionable character, demonstrates his inability to provide appropriate care for a minor child. The court date is set for March 15th. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "He's trying to take Noah." "It appears so." She ran to find Ethan. He was in a meeting with investors, but Clara didn't care. She burst through the door, handed him the tablet, and watched his face go white. "Get out," he said to the investors. "Meeting's over. Get out." They left quickly, sensing danger. Ethan read the statement 3 times, his hands shaking. Then he threw the tablet against the wall, shattering it. "He can't do this. He can't take my son. We'll fight it. We'll get lawyers. We'll..." "You don't understand. Marcus has money, connections, and he's been building this case for months. Every article about us, every photo, every criticism, he's been collecting evidence that I'm an unfit father." Ethan's voice broke. "And maybe he's right. Maybe I am." "Stop. You're an amazing father." "I hired my girlfriend as my executive assistant. I put her in charge of major company events with no experience. I pulled Noah out of school because I couldn't handle the scrutiny. What judge is going to look at that and think I'm stable?" Any judge who actually meets Noah and sees how happy he is, how much he's progressed since I started working here, how much he talks now, how engaged he is. That won't be enough. Clara grabbed his shoulders, forced him to look at her. "Then we make it enough. We show the court exactly who Marcus is, a manipulative sociopath who's using a child as a weapon. We show them who you are, a father who's doing everything possible to help his son heal. And we show them who Noah is, a kid who deserves to stay with the parent who actually loves him." Ethan pulled her into a hug, holding on like she was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. "I can't lose him, Clara. I can't lose Noah too." "You won't, I promise." Over the next 2 weeks, they assembled their defense. Character witnesses, therapy records showing Noah's progress, evidence of Marcus's previous attempts to manipulate and control. Their lawyers were optimistic but cautious. Family court was unpredictable, especially when one party had unlimited resources. The night before the hearing, Clara found Ethan in Noah's room. The kid was asleep, clutching his stuffed rabbit, completely unaware that tomorrow would decide his future. "You should get some sleep," Clara said quietly. "Can't. Keep thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. Then think about the ways it could go right." Ethan looked at her. "What if they ask about us? About our relationship? Marcus's lawyer will definitely bring it up, try to paint you as a bad influence. Let them. I'll tell the truth, that I care about you and Noah, that I'm not going anywhere, that our relationship is none of the court's business as long as Noah is safe and happy." You make it sound simple. It is simple. Marcus is trying to complicate it, but at the core it's simple. Who does Noah want to live with? Who makes him feel safe? The answer to both those questions is you. The hearing was held in a courthouse downtown. Clara wasn't allowed in the courtroom. She wasn't family, wasn't a party to the case, so she waited in the hallway with Emma, pacing and trying not to imagine worst-case scenarios. The hearing lasted 3 hours. When the doors finally opened, Ethan walked out with his lawyer, his expression unreadable. Clara stood up. "Well?" Ethan's face cracked into a smile. "We won." The judge dismissed the case, said Marcus provided no credible evidence of an unstable home environment, and that Noah's therapeutic progress speaks for itself. Clara threw her arms around him, relief flooding through her. "Oh, thank God." The judge also issued a restraining order preventing Marcus from filing frivolous custody claims in the future, and she recommended that Noah's therapist continue monitoring his progress to ensure the current arrangement remains beneficial. Which it will. Which it will, Ethan agreed. They walked outside into spring sunshine. Seattle had finally emerged from its winter gray, and the city looked almost hopeful. Marcus was waiting on the courthouse steps. "This isn't over," he said, his voice cold. "Yes, it is. Ethan's voice was calm, final. You lost, Marcus. You tried to take my son. You failed, and now you're done. Stay away from my family. Your family? You mean your girlfriend and your traumatized kid? Marcus laughed bitterly. You're delusional if you think this is going to work. She'll leave. They always leave. And you'll be alone again, just like you deserve. Clara stepped forward before Ethan could respond. You're wrong about one thing, she said. I'm not going anywhere. Not because of money, not because of pressure, not because of anything you do or say. I'm staying because I choose to stay. Because this family is worth fighting for. And because, unlike you, I actually understand what loyalty means. She took Ethan's hand. We're done here. Let's go home. They left Marcus standing on the courthouse steps, defeated and alone. In the car, Ethan's phone rang. It was Mrs. Chen. Noah wanted to know if they'd won. Tell him yes, Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. Tell him we're coming home and we're celebrating with pizza and ice cream and whatever else he wants. That evening, they ordered pizza from one of the restaurants that had catered the gala. Noah ate 4 slices and talked non-stop about a book he was reading, about a science experiment his tutor had helped him with, about his plans to design a menu for the culinary training center when it opened. Clara watched him, this kid who 6 months ago barely spoke, and felt something settle in her chest. This was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not complete, but happening. After Noah went to bed, Clara and Ethan sat on the patio overlooking the lake, the same spot where they'd talked the night before the gala. I have something for you, Ethan said. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Not a ring box, Clara's heart did a complicated flip at that realization, but something else. Inside was a $1 bill, crumpled and old, the same one she'd handed back to him in the rain 6 months ago. I kept it, Ethan said quietly. Kept it as a reminder that some things are worth more than money, worth more than power or status or any of the things I thought mattered before I met you. Clara's eyes burned. Ethan, I'm not asking you to marry me, not yet. We're still figuring this out, and I want to do it right. But I am asking you to keep choosing us, keep choosing this messy, complicated, beautiful life we're building together. That's the easiest question anyone's ever asked me. She kissed him as the sun set over Seattle, turning the lake golden. 6 months later, Callaway Global Holdings opened the Velvet Oak Culinary Academy in the building where Clara had once served pot roast to ungrateful customers. The restaurant was gutted and rebuilt as a state-of-the-art training facility. 20 students per session, all from low-income backgrounds, all given full scholarships and job placement assistance. The instructors were the same chefs who'd catered the gala. Lynn taught Vietnamese cuisine. The Ethiopian restaurant owner taught traditional cooking techniques. Mrs. Kim, who'd left her old restaurant to join the academy, taught Korean fundamentals. The grand opening was covered by every major news outlet in Seattle. Politicians gave speeches. Tech CEOs wrote checks. And Clara stood beside Ethan and Noah, watching their vision become reality. Marcus didn't attend. He'd left Seattle entirely, taking a position at a company in New York, as far from his brother as geography allowed. Evelyn had slowly rebuilt her relationship with Ethan and now served on the Academy's advisory board, her corporate ruthlessness channeled into something productive. During her speech at the opening ceremony, Clara looked out at the crowd and saw faces she recognized. Patricia, who'd helped plan the event. Emma, who just started a paid internship at Callaway Global Holdings. The board members who'd voted to keep Ethan as CEO. And standing in the back, watching with a small smile, was Mrs. Kim. Clara pulled the crumpled $1 bill from her purse. She carried it everywhere now, and held it up. This is where it started, she said, with an insult that felt like the end of the world. I was broke, desperate, about to lose everything. And then this man in a worn-out coat left me this dollar and walked away into the rain. She looked at Ethan. I gave it back because my dignity was worth more than money. And he hired me because I proved that some things can't be bought. Integrity, courage, the willingness to fight for what's right even when it costs you everything. Clara turned back to the audience. This academy exists because we believe those same things. That talent isn't about pedigree. That opportunity shouldn't depend on wealth. That people deserve a chance to build something meaningful, regardless of where they started. She held up the dollar bill one more time. This dollar was never an insult. It was a test. And every single person in this building, Every student, every instructor, every supporter has passed that same test. You've chosen purpose over profit, community over convenience, real change over empty gestures. The applause was deafening. After the ceremony, Clara found a quiet corner with Ethan and Noah. The kid had grown 3 inches in the past year, was starting to look less like a traumatized child and more like a confident young person with opinions and dreams. "Mom would like this place," Noah said, looking around the bustling academy. "She always wanted to help people." "She did," Ethan agreed, "and now we're doing it for her. For her and for us," Clara added. "Because helping people isn't just about them. It's about who we become in the process." Noah hugged her, just wrapped his arms around her waist and held on. Clara hugged him back, this kid who'd asked her not to leave and whom she'd promised to stay for. That evening, back at the estate, Emma cornered Clara in the guest house. "So when's he going to propose?" "Who says he's going to propose? Please, I've seen the way he looks at you. I've heard him on the phone with jewelers. Don't act surprised when it happens." Clara threw a pillow at her. "Maybe I like being surprised." "You're going to say yes, right?" "Of course I'm going to say yes, but don't tell him I said that." Emma grinned. "Your secret's safe with me." 2 months later, Ethan proposed on the patio overlooking the lake, the same spot where they'd had so many important conversations. No big production, no elaborate setup, just the two of them and a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. Not Elizabeth's ring, Clara had made that clear, but a different piece of family history that felt like a bridge between past and future. "Marry me," Ethan said. "Not because I need someone to help run the company or take care of Noah, though you do both brilliantly, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it, because you make me want to be better, because you handed back a dollar bill and changed everything." Clara said yes before he could finish the speech. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the estate. Just family and close friends. Noah was the ring bearer, Emma was the maid of honor, and Mrs. Kim catered with help from the academy students. During the reception, Clara stood with Ethan watching people dance and laugh and celebrate. This life that had seemed impossible a year ago was now just life. Complicated and beautiful and occasionally messy, but real. "No regrets?" Ethan asked. "About what?" "Running into the rain. Giving back that dollar. Taking a chance on a complete stranger." Clara thought about it. About the girl she'd been. Broke, desperate, drowning in debt and fear. About the moment she'd chosen dignity over money, self-respect over survival. "My only regret," she said, "is that I didn't throw the dollar harder." Ethan laughed and kissed her, and Clara realized something she'd been too busy surviving to notice before. Happiness wasn't about having money or status or perfect circumstances. It was about the choices you made when everything fell apart, about who you chose to be when the world told you to settle for less. She'd been a waitress who refused to accept an insulting tip. Now she was a woman who'd helped build an academy, saved a family, and found love in the most unexpected place. But really, she was still the same person. Just someone who'd finally stopped measuring her worth by other people's standards. The crumpled $1 bill sat framed on Clara's desk at Callaway Global Holdings, a reminder of the night her life changed. People who visited her office always asked about it. She told them different versions of the story depending on her mood. Sometimes funny, sometimes serious, always true. But the version she told Noah, years later when he was old enough to understand, was the simplest. "That dollar taught me that you can't put a price on dignity, that the moment you know your worth is the moment you stop letting other people define it for you, and that sometimes the worst moments of your life are actually the beginning of something extraordinary." Noah, 15 now, and helping run the Academy's youth program, looked at the framed dollar and smiled. "So basically, that guy in the restaurant was a jerk but accidentally did you a favor?" Clara laughed. "That guy in the restaurant is your father. And yes, he was testing me. But I don't think either of us expected the test to last a lifetime." "Good thing you passed then." "Yeah, good thing. Because in the end, that's what Clara learned from a crumpled dollar bill and a man in a worn-out coat standing in the rain. Life isn't about the hand you're dealt. It's about how you play it. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from money you desperately need because losing yourself costs more than losing everything else." Clara had walked away that night and walked straight into a future she never could have imagined, but one she'd earned by refusing to settle for anything less than she deserved.